The lecture hall fell silent as Professor Kelmar's tentacles gestured emphatically at the holographic display. Gravity ratings from across known space flickered in the air, a cascading list of numbers that told the story of where species could and could not survive. 0.7 G, Kelmar announced, his voice resonating through the translation matrix. That is the absolute ceiling. No sentient species, no complex organism, nothing with cognitive function survives above 0.7 G for extended periods. The physics are undeniable. In the third row something moved, not a tentacle twitch or a membrane flutter like the other students, but a hand, 5 digits, raised straight up. Kelmar's primary eye swiveled toward the interruption. The creature sitting there looked absurdly fragile. Thin limbs, no exoskeleton, no protective carapace. Its skin was a pale beige color, completely exposed to the environment. The being wore simple cloth coverings, as if fabric could protect it from anything at all. Yes? Kelmar's irritation barely concealed itself. You have a question, exchange student? Actually, the human said, and by the void it was smiling. I have more of an observation. Proceed. You just said no species survives 1G gravity. The human paused, and that smile widened into something that made Kelmar's dorsal ridge prickle with inexplicable unease. So, how am I not currently crushed into a puddle on this floor? The lecture hall erupted. Not with agreement or scholarly discussion, but with what Kelmar would later describe in his incident report as disruptive laughter. The human was laughing. At him. At established xenophysiology. Ridiculous. Kelmar sputtered. Earth's gravity is 0.37, perhaps 0.4 at most. Are wrong. The human stood up, and Kelmar noticed for the first time how the creature moved. Smooth. Controlled. Like it was used to fighting resistance with every step. Earth is 1.0 G, Professor. Standard galactic gravity unit. It's literally the baseline. Impossible. Want to arm wrestle about it? Kelmar's translator struggled with the idiom for a moment before providing context. A challenge. This soft, fragile thing was challenging him. The human is correct. A voice called from the back. Toral, the Vexian student who never spoke unless absolutely certain. She was manipulating her personal data tablet, 4 eyes wide with what might have been horror or fascination. Kelmar could never tell with Vexians. I just cross-referenced the Academy's database with human-provided measurements. Earth's surface gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared, 1.0 G by our standards. The lecture hall went from chaotic to utterly silent in less than a second. Kelmar felt his respiratory spiracles constrict. That cannot be accurate. Look at them. They are delicate, weak. They have no reinforced skeletal structure, no hydraulic muscle systems. No, we have bones. The human interrupted, still grinning like this was all tremendously entertaining. Calcium-based endoskeleton works pretty well, and yeah, our muscles are just fibers that contract. Nothing fancy. Then you should be flattened, Kelmar insisted. The pressure on your circulatory system alone is handled by a 4-chambered heart that pumps about 5 liters of blood through roughly 100,000 kilometers of blood vessels. The human, whose name Kelmar suddenly realized he had never bothered to learn, was walking down the aisle now, moving easily. Too easily. We breathe using negative pressure in our lungs. Gravity actually helps the process. Our spines have these cool curves that distribute load. It's all very efficient. Kelmar's colleague, Professor Thex, spoke from her position near the doorway. The human homeworld is listed as a death world in the expedition guidelines. Class 9 hazard rating. Yeah, that tracks. The human agreed cheerfully. We have weather that can rip buildings apart. Enough predators to fill a nightmare catalog, and our planet keeps trying to kill us with earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts, and the occasional asteroid. Fun place. Great beaches, though. This is absurd, Kelmar announced. But his voice lacked conviction, and he knew it. If your species evolved under such hostile conditions, why are you here? Why leave? The human reached the front of the lecture hall, and leaned against Kelmar's desk with a casual disrespect for proper academic protocol that made the professor's tentacles curl. Because we got bored, I guess. Built everything we could build at home. Figured we would see what else was out there. Bored, Kelmar repeated flatly. Well, bored and curious. It is kind of our thing. The human glanced at the holographic display, still showing the gravity tolerance chart. Hey, can I ask you something, Professor? Kelmar gestured for the creature to continue, too shocked to properly respond. You said 0.7 G is the maximum for complex life, right? So what happens to most species when they experience anything higher? Circulatory collapse. The X answered before Kelmar could. She sounded fascinated now. Her earlier alarm replaced with scientific interest. Within minutes at 0.8 G, most species experience catastrophic organ failure. 0.9 G is uniformly fatal within seconds. Aha. The human nodded thoughtfully. So you are all basically walking around in what we would consider low gravity, like all the time. It is normal gravity, Kelmar protested weakly. For you, sure. That smile again. Predatory. Amused. Absolutely unnerving. But for us, this station is running at about 0.65 G. It feels like walking on the moon. You have been to your moon? Toral asked. Yeah, lots of times. 0.16 G there. Super fun. We can jump like 6 times higher than normal. The human paused, then added, actually, that is probably why I keep hitting my head on door frames here. Keep forgetting to adjust. Kelmar watched as the human reached up and touched a faint discoloration on its forehead, evidence of previous impacts. This creature kept damaging itself on architecture and barely seemed to notice. How many of you are there? Kelmar asked quietly. Humans, last count was around 9 billion, give or take. 9 billion, Kelmar repeated. 9 billion creatures evolved to survive conditions that would kill any other known species within moments. When you put it that way, it sounds way more dramatic than it is. The human laughed again. We are not that scary, Professor. I mean, look at me. No claws, no venom, no armor. Pretty basic setup. The X moved closer, her sensor stalks extended fully. You claim you are not adapted for combat, yet your species survived a Class 9 death world. How? The human's expression shifted. The smile remained, but something else appeared behind it, something calculating. Endurance, the human said simply. We outlast everything, outthink everything. And yeah, when we absolutely have to, we outviolence everything. But mostly it is the first two. Elaborate, Kelmar demanded. Well, take persistence hunting. Before we had weapons, our ancestors would just chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can regulate our temperature through sweating, see? Most animals can't. So we would just jog after them for hours, days sometimes, until they literally could not run anymore. Then we would walk up and, the human made a striking gesture. Dinner time. The lecture hall remained absolutely silent. That is horrifying, Toral whispered. That is Tuesday, the human corrected cheerfully. Want to know the really fun part? Kelmar was certain he did not, but found himself nodding anyway. We are still built that way. Every human you meet can, theoretically, run for hours without stopping. We heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. We have pain tolerance that is frankly ridiculous. And our brains? The human tapped the side of its head. Pattern recognition machines designed to solve novel problems in hostile environments. It is why we are good at science, engineering, art, strategy, all of it. We evolved to adapt or die. Professor Kelmar looked at his class of students, all staring at the human with varying expressions of shock, fear, and fascination. He looked at his carefully prepared lecture on biological limitations and survival thresholds. He looked at the fragile-looking creature leaning against his desk, grinning like this was all a wonderful joke. Class dismissed, Kelmar announced. We will clearly need to revise the curriculum. As students filed out in stunned silence, the human remained behind. Hey, Professor, for what it is worth, I think your work on zero-G adaptations is brilliant. Read your paper last week. Kelmar's tentacles twitched with surprised pleasure, despite everything. You did? Yeah. Actually wanted to talk to you about human applications. See, we have been trying to figure out long-duration space travel, and your research on cellular modification could help with. 3 days later, Kelmar found himself in a situation he would have considered impossible before the human arrived. He was in the station gym, voluntarily. Come on, Professor. Just 10 more. The human, whose name he had finally learned was Marcus, called out encouragingly. You are doing great. Kelmar was not doing great. Kelmar was actively reconsidering every life choice that had led to this moment. His tentacles trembled as he attempted another resistance exercise on equipment designed for species with actual muscular endurance. This is torture, Kelmar gasped. This is physical therapy, Marcus corrected, adjusting the resistance down another notch. You wanted to understand human physiology. Well, this is where it starts. We build our bodies because our gravity demands it. Across the gym, a small crowd had gathered. Word had spread quickly about the human, and now half the xenobiology department was watching Marcus demonstrate exercises that should have been impossible. Okay, watch this, Marcus announced, dropping to the floor. His body became a rigid plank, parallel to the ground, supported only by his hands and toes. Then he began lowering and raising himself using only his arms. Standard push-up. We teach this to children. I can do about 80 before I get tired. 80, Professor Thex repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Supporting your full body weight against 1 G equivalent. Well, we are at 0.65 G here, so it is actually easier. Marcus continued the movement, utterly relaxed. Back home, I usually do 100. Keeps the heart healthy. Toral raised a manipulator appendage. Question. You mentioned humans have been to your moon multiple times. How did you survive the acceleration required for orbital escape velocity from a 1G world? Marcus paused mid-push-up, which somehow made the feat more impressive. Oh, that is a fun story. We basically sat on top of controlled explosions and hoped the math was right. You what? Kelmar sputtered. Chemical rockets, Professor. Lots of fuel, lots of thrust, lots of people doing very careful calculations. Marcus returned to a standing position without apparent effort. The G-forces during launch could hit 3, maybe 4 G for short periods. Astronauts trained for it. Some people even passed out, but the suits and procedures kept them alive. 4 times standard gravity, the X calculated quickly. That would liquefy most species' internal organs. Yeah, it is pretty rough, Marcus admitted. But humans can handle short-duration high G exposure. Our bodies are built to take impact, acceleration, deceleration, contact sports, vehicle crashes, falling from heights. We break, sure, but we are surprisingly hard to actually kill. Kelmar's translator must have malfunctioned, because he could have sworn Marcus just said humans engaged in recreational activities involving deliberate physical trauma. Contact sports? Kelmar asked carefully. Oh man, yeah. Football, rugby, hockey, boxing, mixed martial arts. Marcus was grinning again. That unsettling expression that Kelmar had learned meant the human was about to say something disturbing. We literally invented games where the objective is to hit each other as hard as possible within certain rules. For fun, people pay to watch. The assembled professors exchanged glances that communicated a single unified thought. What kind of species does this for entertainment? I will demonstrate, Marcus offered. Before anyone could object, he approached one of the reinforced support pillars designed to hold the station's structural integrity. He drew his fist back, and Kelmar realized with mounting horror what was about to happen. Wait. Do not. Marcus punched the pillar. The impact echoed through the gym like a gunshot. The pillar vibrated slightly. The human's fist left a small dent in the metal. Marcus examined his knuckles with mild interest. Huh? Going to bruise? Should have wrapped my hands. You damaged yourself, Kelmar stated, somewhat unnecessarily. Little bit, yeah. Hurt like hell too. Marcus flexed his fingers experimentally. But see, that is the thing about humans. Pain is information, not a stop signal. We feel it, We process it. We decide if it is worth pushing through. Usually it is. Toral moved closer, scanning Marcus's hand with her medical scanner. Microfractures in 3 knuckle bones, soft tissue damage. Mild hemorrhaging. And you are still using that hand normally. It is not that bad, Marcus protested. I have had worse sparring. This will heal in a week, maybe 2. Sparring, Kelmar repeated. You regularly damage yourself practicing combat. Well, yeah. How else do you learn to fight? Marcus looked genuinely confused by the question, as if routine physical violence was the most natural thing in the world. You cannot get good at something without practice. And fighting is a pretty useful skill where we come from. Professor Thex's sensor stalks quivered with what might have been excitement or terror. Marcus, I must ask. You mentioned persistence hunting earlier. Do humans still engage in that behavior? Not for food anymore. We have agriculture, grocery stores, all that. Marcus shrugged. But we kept the endurance. Ultra-marathons, triathlons, adventure races. We turned hunting into sport and made it harder, because apparently regular running was not challenging enough. How far can you run? Toral asked. Me personally. About 40 kilometers before I need to stop. There are people who do 100, 160, even longer. Some races last for days. Kelmar felt his respiratory spiracles constrict again. Days. This creature, this entire species could maintain physical activity for days without rest. Why? Kelmar asked, and the word came out almost as a plea. Why push yourselves to such extremes? Marcus considered the question seriously, the smile fading into something more thoughtful. Because we can, I guess. Because there is always someone who wants to see what is possible, what the limit actually is. He paused. And because if we do not push ourselves, we get soft, complacent. Our ancestors survived by being tougher than everything trying to kill them. We honor that. Remember it. Your entire species has cultural trauma from your home world, DX observed clinically. Maybe. Marcus laughed. But it sounded different this time, quieter. Or maybe we just know what we are capable of, and we refuse to forget. Earth made us survivors. Extinction-level events, ice ages, predators, plagues, famines. We lived through all of it. Every human alive is descended from the ones who would not quit, would not lie down and die. The gym had gone completely silent. Even the ambient hum of the station's life support seemed subdued. That is why you explore, Kelmar said softly, understanding clicking into place. Not boredom, not curiosity. You expand because staying still means stagnation, and stagnation means death. Now you are getting it, Professor. Marcus's smile returned, genuine this time. We came to the stars because it is the next challenge, the next thing to survive. And yeah, we will probably make mistakes, break some bones, maybe even get ourselves killed. But we will learn. We will adapt. We will endure. Kelmar looked at this human, this representative of a species that should not exist. Too fragile, too weak, too exposed. And yet here Marcus stood, barely winded from demonstrations that would have hospitalized any other being in the room. I need to update my lecture series, Kelmar announced. Extensively. Want some help? Marcus offered. I can get you in touch with human physicians, evolutionary biologists, sports scientists, plenty of people who would love to share data. Yes, Kelmar agreed immediately. Yes, I would appreciate that very much. As the crowd dispersed and the gym returned to normal operations, Kelmar found himself contemplating the galaxy's future. Humanity had only just begun to expand into known space, only just started to make contact with other species. What would the universe look like in 100 years, 1,000, when billions of these relentless, adaptable, impossible creatures spread across the stars? Hey, Professor, Marcus called as Kelmar prepared to leave. One more thing. Yes? We are the nice ones. Marcus grinned. The humans who volunteer for first contact, who go into science and diplomacy. Just, keep that in mind. Kelmar's tentacles went rigid. What do you mean? I mean back home. We have people who chose different paths. Military, security, extreme environment specialists. People who looked at a 1G death world and thought, yeah, I can do better than survive here, I can thrive. Marcus stretched casually, joints popping. You have not seen what humans are capable of when we actually try. Professor Kelmar returned to his quarters that evening, and immediately began revising every assumption he had ever made about biological limitations, survival thresholds, and the nature of sentient life in the universe. Somewhere on Earth, 9 billion humans continued their daily lives, completely unaware that they had just become the galaxy's newest source of existential terror. And Marcus, still smiling, went to find something heavier to lift.